Welcome to Culmination, where we're not experts, but we sure have a lot to say. In the process of becoming our best self, I have with me the choir singer, Annamarie Jowanovitz, to discuss gratitude. And with that said, let's get started. So, what is gratitude?
For me, I think it means being mindful of what you're thankful for. Because if you just say gratitude, I think usually the first thing people think of is being thankful for things. But I think having gratitude means that you have to be mindful that you do have that thanks for what you have. Um, like,
So, what do you mean by that mindfulness?
I think it's a lot, it has a lot to do with being aware of what you have and being aware of like your surroundings. And I don't want to say like being compared to other people, but I would say being like aware of what you have in terms of like things that other people might not have access to, and being grateful for those outlets and opportunities that you might have that other people don't, and being aware of what you have access to compared to others.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a very good start. I feel like we could add on to that of just like, I don't know, when I think of gratitude, it's like, yes, there's definitely a comparison component. Like, yes, I'm thankful that I have like a nice shelter when some people don't, of course. Um, but I don't know. I feel like a big component is also like just internal versus like comparing directly or indirectly to others. Just
For
because it's
sure.
like I personally could not have these friends that I have or this family that loves me or these other things or maybe something that I have because I personally worked for it. So I feel like gratitude in that sense is you're thankful for these things from your own actions that kind of led to that, and it's less of a comparison. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I definitely see what you're saying. I
I
think,
think both components are valid though.
yeah, now that I'm thinking more about it, I feel like there can be like, I don't know, these might not be the correct terms to describe it, like an independent gratitude and then maybe like a dependent gratitude. Because if you like think about it, I mean, like you had mentioned actions, and it made me think of doing things for yourself and going through with opportunities and things that like that was your choice, and like being grateful for that choice and being grateful with like those actions that possibly led you to that choice, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
then there could also be like the dependent gratitude of things that maybe are outside your bubble of control, and that maybe somebody else does for you, or that you just generally experience, like you mentioned before, like having a roof over your head.
Yeah.
Like
Uh,
that could be, it might not be something that I explicitly like decide, but it's something that say my parents like provide for me or my family does. So like that could be, um, I don't know. That's what it made me think of.
I think it would be, or at least when I think of those two definitions, maybe more like internal and external, as
Hmm.
that's how the locus of control works. It's like you
Yeah.
can't, what you said for the dependent would also make sense as like an external, just because it's the things that you're grateful for that you can't control, you know?
Hmm.
While the internal is like, I'm grateful for these good friends I have because in a sense I made an effort to talk with them and I'm a good friend to them and there's kind of like a I put in effort for it, if that makes sense. There's
Yeah,
more
I
control.
I definitely see what you're saying. I think a big part of gratitude as well, though, is like being humble too, I think.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, by like while your actions like definitely like could take a part in getting your friends as well. I think definitely a large part for me in that situation is like I'm grateful to be like blessed by the presence of my friends, if that makes sense. Like, yes, I have contributed to part of the relationship, but in the end, it's not just me. It's like a two-way
Yeah, yeah.
relationship. And like acknowledging that like um being like, this isn't all of me. Like, definitely it is part of uh, my actions partly led to this relationship.
Yes.
But like, yeah.
There's a level of reciprocation there.
Hmm.
And definitely when there is a good level of it, like you can be grateful for it. Um, so I'll ask you this. What are you grateful for?
Could probably go on and on and
Well,
on,
go ahead.
honestly.
Start listing things.
I mean, this is a little random, but whenever someone asks me the question, one of the first things I think of is this is going to sound a little odd, but like my thumbs that I have on my hands. Because if you think about it, there's a lot of things that people just take for granted, like, oh, yeah, you have hands, you have a thumb, or whatever. But I mean, there's a lot of things that you don't realize you need to do stuff for. So that's actually like one of the first things that pops in my mind, because there was a long time ago where I think my mom told me, we were talking about what to be grateful for, and I think that's what she said, and I was like, what? I was a little confused, but it was one of those like little things that um, you might not think about. And I think in like to do bigger picture things, I'm really thankful for my parents and for having shelter and clothes and the ability to work and have food and not have to worry about that, because there are so many people out in the world who cannot say the same thing. And I that's definitely one of the other big things on my list. And then I think like next, kind of, I already mentioned my parents, but like the relationships, like I'm really thankful for my friends and going to a really good school district where there's a lot of diverse people and a lot of different stories, and the ability to learn about other people and to have those relationships with friends. And I'm especially grateful, I think, for my kind of core friend group. And we've all known each other since elementary school. And I think that's something that not everybody has, because like people move and whatnot. And it's a simple thing, but I think having that like core bond of even when we were so young, I'm so grateful to have that and the ability to grow with them and change with them. I'm also really thankful for. And this is very general, but I'm very grateful for all the opportunities I kind of mentioned with my school before. But just grateful that I have, like, because there's a lot that I just have not done, but yet I have. Like, you know, I didn't pay for my house. I don't pay for my food. I pay for some of my clothes, but not all my clothes. I can drive to work. I mean, it's just the things that I didn't work for that necessarily, if that makes sense. But yet I still acquired because of other people gracing me with these like different things that I don't necessarily need, but really help me just in everyday life, which I'm humbled almost by that people do that. Like my parents worked so hard to provide us with stuff, and I think, and even just my mom making dinner every night or my dad making dinner every night. It just, like, of course I try and help out and whatnot, but I mean the majority, they buy the food, they make the food, they provide me with so many things that I mean, I don't know if everyone else thinks about it, but I really try, like at least hopefully multiple times a day, like just to say thank you, or think about like thank you, like thinking about the things that I am blessed with that I might have not worked for.
It's that mindfulness, like you brought up, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just being aware of the things other people may do for you that you might not notice if you weren't paying attention.
Yeah, so I think that's all really great. Now I'll ask kind of a center point question to this episode. How, like, taking what you said, everything that you're grateful for, consider this. How can gratitude influence our view of ourselves or just life in general? Like, because you have these specific things that you're grateful for, how do you think your worldview, in a sense, is influenced by that?
Well, I like to believe that I'm more at peace, if that makes sense. Because we talked earlier about, I know you mentioned like internal and external locus of control.
Mhm.
And I, to like think about being thankful, if that makes sense, and having that gratitude, I think helps me understand other people, if that makes sense. Because if people are doing all this stuff for me and I think about how grateful I am and um, acknowledge how that makes me feel, then if I try and do like the same things for others, hopefully I can spread that sense of gratefulness. Because if I help you out, you'll be like, you might be like, acknowledge, like, oh my gosh, that was really cool. Like, just in your mind, like, not necessarily saying it, but just,
Mhm.
and then you might do that for somebody else. So I think, I mean, to me, I don't know if peace is the correct word in describing that, but it gives me a sense of like happiness, of the ability that I can help other people and people are helping me. And I'm grateful for that. If that makes sense. That was a little all over the place, but
Yeah, and it's you're overall less. Do you think you're less bitter because of it? Like when things are bad?
for sure, for sure. I think there are times when I'll get wrapped up in something really petty that means nothing. It's literally the simplest thing and it makes me really upset, you know? And I think, and I'll definitely get caught up in this too. I'm definitely not perfect at all.
Of course, yeah.
But I mean, my parents will sometimes remind me, like, if I'm really upset about something, they'll be like, Annamarie, like, at least you, like, you know, for COVID example, like, for
Mhm.
example, throughout this past year, it's been really hard for me not to see my friends as much as I normally would.
Mhm.
And I really miss that social aspect. And while I do think that, like, if I wasn't allowed to see them, like, all or anything like that, that could have, like, mental, um, like, issues that could potentially inflict upon me, but
Yeah.
it's never been like that severe. But it's like when I might get really down on that, it's like I think like my parents will sometimes remind me, be like, well, I mean, we've gotten this far and we haven't gotten COVID yet. And you know what? Your grandparents are still alive and well, and your cousins are, and we are, and we are all safe. And while it really stinks that you can't always hang out with the people you want to hang out, I mean, we need to be grateful for that while this isn't super great, I mean, we're not sick. We're not in the hospital. My parents
Yeah.
aren't on a ventilator. My grandparents aren't on a ventilator. We haven't gotten COVID yet. We haven't had family members that have died. I mean, we haven't even had close friends that have passed away because of COVID. And I know there are people out there who are really hurting because of those
Mhm.
things. And I think having someone remind me of what we are blessed with, like, kind of helps. I think there's a little bit, it's a little ignorant to not acknowledge what you like your privilege and then therefore like you should be grateful for. Maybe, I mean, not everyone has privilege, that's not what I mean, but for your strengths and things that you've been given, and it helps to put it in perspective.
I guess privilege would be more of like just what you have.
Yeah, yeah.
So here's an interesting question that I thought of just while you were explaining that anecdote. Does gratitude come with sacrifice?
Wouldn't say all the time. I think some gratitude can come with sacrifice. um but I mean, I guess it depends on who the sacrifice it might affect. Like, say I live with a roof above my head. Now, I didn't sacrifice anything to do that, but my parents worked for that. And would you consider working to be a sacrifice? Unless, well, I know my parents enjoy their jobs, so is it just a bonus? Is it something they worked for? If it's something they enjoy, then I wouldn't necessarily say it's a sacrifice. So I think they could come hand in hand, because I know there are people out there, especially like maybe some like single moms who work all the time, or single dads, who work all the time for their kids. And they work so much that it's exhausting and debilitating and hard on their mental health and their well-being, but yet they do it to provide food and a home and clothes and education for their kids. And depending on the way you look at that, you could say that is a sacrifice. And then like as their kids might be like, they would be grateful to their, hopefully they would be grateful to their mom or dad for providing them with that opportunity. So I think they definitely could go hand in hand, but not necessarily all the time.
Hmm. The line that specifically inspired that question was how you were upset about that, like the fact that you couldn't exactly see your friends because of these limitations,
Mm-hmm.
but you were reassured that because you sacrificed that interpersonal time that you could have had with people that could have spread the virus, you were reassured that everybody in your family is healthy and well.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, you're grateful for that. That's a bigger priority to you and your family. And you're grateful for it, but you did have to sacrifice for it.
Yeah.
Does that kind of make sense?
Mm-hmm. It makes total sense. I definitely think it really depends on like that situation.
Mhm.
Um,
Um, so it's always important to be grateful, obviously.
mm,
But how can we be grateful? And I know this sounds like a really like obvious question, like just take time to be mindful and everything, but I feel like even though this is a concept we can all get behind, not all of us can exactly, like it's hard, you know? It's hard to sit down and appreciate things, especially when things can happen to us or we're spiteful or we're angry or enraged by things that are either self-inflicted or things out of our control.
mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what I am getting at with that question. How can we be grateful?
um, well, while you were talking, you were mentioning like sitting down and like thinking of things to be grateful for, kind of, and it made me
Yeah.
think of this moment. I think it was back in April or March when we were doing the performance of R&J at the high school, and it was our last.
Can you define
Um,
what that is real quick?
that's the musical we did at our high school this past year. So we had a cast about, um, I want to say 20 people. So it was a very tight knit show, and it was an original show that we adapted from the original Romeo and Juliet, and we had a composer create songs. So it was a very special thing to really all of us because we had all, like, these were all original characters that we were adapting and creating and working on, and like had never been done before. I mean, obviously Romeo and Juliet has, but it was different. It was really special to all of us. And on our last night, we always do warm-ups before we like go on stage. Like we'll do some like exercises, and like we might play a few like theater games, if that makes sense, or just to get like ourselves hyped up. And one of the seniors, when we had finished kind of our exercise, we we're like all kind of calming down. Um,
Yeah.
he like we were all in a circle, and he came into the middle of the circle, and he was like, okay guys, like I prepared this speech, and I know it's like really sappy, but I wanted to talk to you guys for a minute. And so one of the big points that this guy made was when he like thought back to all of the shows that he's done at the high school, he really struggled to remember just like a moment from that specific show. That it was hard to think of a specific moment in time of of that show.
Yeah.
And he encouraged all of us to just take 3 seconds while we were on stage, off stage, backstage, in the wings, whatever, to just be really truly in the moment and to just take a picture almost in your mind. Like don't just watch and observe and just soak it all in so that we could remember. And while that doesn't necessarily have to do directly with gratefulness, I think having that moment, like I tried to do it for sure on the last night of the show. And I mean, just thinking back, it was just a few seconds of gratefulness. And it didn't take that long. And it was just 3 seconds of just looking around you and just stopping what you're doing for just a minute and acknowledging the things that, because life goes by really fast. And to take that just 3 second moment, I think helps to create that mindset of being mindful. And I mean, automatically, when I just took that moment to observe my friends and just be on stage, I was filled with such like honor to be able to be there with everyone else and to be surrounded by such amazing people. And I was just truly grateful. And I mean, I wasn't even thinking, oh, I need to be grateful when that happened. It just happened. So I think, and I've tried to incorporate this in like so far in the summer, like trying to have that one moment where I can think back on. And it has helped me with being grateful by just taking those 3 seconds. And I know you mentioned before that like sometimes it's hard to take that time to acknowledge those things.
Right, yeah.
But I think just taking literally 3 seconds, taking a deep breath, just observing for just a little bit. And I think it, at least for me, I mean, my experience was filled with that thankfulness, gratefulness, honor that I was a living, breathing person. Like when you think about that, that's so amazing. You're alive, you can do things. I mean, it's crazy. And just to take those 3 seconds, like each day or each week, it can be really impactful.
A
And
reset.
yeah. And you had mentioned like when people are enraged or upset, like that can be a little bit hard. It can be a little naive to just say, oh yeah, just be grateful for everything, because it's like, yeah, no, there are things are still, and I should be a little bit more ambiguous with the issues, I guess.
Yeah,
I could
yeah.
say there are still things that we can work on in this day and age, period, you know?
Well, I mean,
So,
and another thing that one of the things that I've been thinking about, and I had a recent conversation with some friends about this, like just kind of one of those nights where you're breaking down, like what is this world we live in? Like, what is
hmm,
life? What is meaning? What is purpose?
yeah.
And we reached a conclusion. Well, actually, there's many conclusions, but one of the big ideas that you can't really hide from is this inherent theme that life of itself is suffering. And like whether that's just kind of how it is. And the let me just explain why it is like that. And then obviously I have a thing that makes this better and not just leave it on that note.
All
Um
right, bye. That's it.
well, why when we bring children into this world, like we reproduce and everything like that, why is it painful for the mother to have a child? Like it's just it is. Why why are there so many things like politics or like a rainy day when you planned for a baseball game, for an example?
Mm.
um,
Did that just happen?
it's
No.
going to happen. So well, by the time of this video's release, it did happen probably. You know, like these things you can't control, and here you are as an individual trying to put pieces together to make sense of the world and also make things your own and find your place. How can you do that when things are inherently out of your control? How, and that's like the whole basis of the external locus of control. It's just this whole philosophy that basically all of life is a casino. And it's like sometimes it's literally just a roulette wheel or a slot machine or maybe poker, where it's like you have some physical inputs, like you can bluff, you can interact with people. You can kind of insert some of your control into it, but the rest of the game is random. You don't truly know what the other people's hands look like. Um, and when you, it's a very weird predicament because, in a sense, yes, life is suffering. Yes, we're in a floating rock in space. That's kind of what I call the nihilist philosophy, like just the in quotes floating rock in space belief. Just where you feel so small and insignificant that like once we die, and there's nothing there. And what I hate to say is that, I mean, I guess if you really want to think of it like that, is it exactly false? But the thing is, if you live your entire life like that, even if that's the cold, hard, quote unquote truth, there's no point. So that begs the question, what is the point to living? And I mean, really, that question is up to you. I'm not going to sit here and tell you this is why your life matters and is important. But I mean, for me, I live like my purpose is to interact with people, to learn about people, to learn about myself, to enjoy the simple, small things like the nice weather or those little interactions I have, or to make music, or I don't know, to help people or record for a podcast, play a simple video game, like the small things, but also the big things. I mean, that's for me. Like, this is, I guess, my purpose. Like, I can't answer why we're here, why I'm here, why I was born, or anything. I mean, I know why I was born from like why my parents had me, but it's like out of one out of a billion sperm cells that could have collided with like what, one out of five eggs. I don't really know, but like the probability is
Yeah, yeah.
so wacky, and that made the manifestation that is me talking to you and everybody else now. Like, I can't explain why that is. There's a lot of unexplainable things about the world, such as why life is inherently suffering. But at the end of the day, it's like we can't really answer these questions of why we're here. But the bigger question is, what can we do with our life now that we are here? And I feel like that's the important question. And we could just live our entire life with spite and revenge and hatred. Um, but that's just not meaningful at the end of the day. Like, rage has feeling to it. Like, it is an emotion just as love is an emotion. But you're not going to feel fulfillment or satisfaction after that. Well, maybe satisfaction, but not like long-term fulfillment. And I feel like gratitude fits in perfectly because there's a lot of things that can get under our skin. We could view the world as just the cruel place that it may be. But also think about the good stuff. Like, truly think about it. Even when it comes to suffering, like, because I don't know, because I've had bad interactions in the past or things that I've done that I'm not proud of, I take the time, I think about it. Like, sometimes you have to look yourself right in the eye and confront these demons, if you will. Maybe it's not as profound as demons. Maybe it's as simple as you just have to correct a simple mistake. But you have to have that revelation that something happened or I'm going to continue to make mistakes, as we're always going to make mistakes in the future. But you just have to be able to forgive yourself, but also change. You can't, like, if something's not working, you need to be able to fix that. And when you're grateful for the things you have, it also makes it a lot easier because it's like, well, I appreciate the help that I received to get better because I can't just do this alone. Um, and in a sense, you have to be grateful for these otherwise awful events. Why is that intuitive? I don't know, but if you think of it that way, like I'm thankful for everything that's happened in my life, even if it's inherently bad. And I'm just using that as an example, not exactly that I truly think that everything I've done, you know. Um, but you know, it's because of all of that, because of this butterfly effect, if you will, I'm here now and I'm better now. And it's just the human experience to feel good things and bad things. And if we can be grateful for what we have, and if we can enjoy the small moments and enjoy what we have, then
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, sorry. You kept mentioning like kind of how life was suffering multiple times, and then you kind of talked about how like the good versus the bad, and
yeah,
I I definitely think that without the bad, I mean, why? How would the good have any meaning?
yes,
You know, I mean, like, yeah, a mother carries around like a child for like 9 months of like, and it's hard, man. Like, it is intense and
right,
arduous. And then you mentioned like giving birth, like, yeah, that's really intense and painful. But
yeah,
I mean, without that work and without that struggle, I don't think life would be as a beautiful thing as it is. I mean,
hmm,
if we didn't have the sad and the bad moments, we wouldn't be able to differentiate between the bad and the good. And it
yeah.
makes me think of the movie Inside Out
Huh.
because I think that's honestly
Oh,
the
where
big
sadness
message of
goes
that.
away.
Yeah, because like you like sadness and joy I don't necessarily think are like polar opposites, but they
Mm-mm.
complement each other in a sort because you can't feel that profound happiness of making the basketball team if you didn't like not make it beforehand or you didn't work hard or you didn't put in all that effort to do that. You're not going to feel that awesome, elated, like wonderful feeling, if that makes sense. So I think you could say, yeah, life is suffering in a sense, but I mean, if you were to say, oh, life is great, I mean, like, that's not, I wouldn't say that's really true either. And nor would I say is life is suffering is also true. I think
Oh, it's
they
all
are,
interpretive at the end of the day.
yeah, it's really all up to how people interpret things and how they live their life. But
Yeah,
without the bad, I mean, it's hard to recognize the good and be grateful for the good because how can I be grateful for the good if all it is goodness? You know what I'm saying? Like, then
yeah.
you can't, there's nothing to compare it to, there's nothing to see that's different and horrible. I mean, without disease and like disease is terrible and horrible, but then it's like you have those beautiful, happy moments when you get to see your family again after COVID. I mean, that's beautiful. I mean, like, I'm so grateful to be able to see my grandparents this weekend. I'm so excited. I'm so grateful, but I wouldn't be feeling that joy if I didn't have to struggle through this whole pandemic of not seeing them, you know? I don't
Hmm.
know. Yeah.
And I mean, one of my classic examples of this whole thing is just the idea of time, and more specifically immortality, because I'm somebody who personally kind of fears death a little bit. It's like, I mean, how can you not, though? It's this existential dread of everything you have is just going to be over someday. I mean, like, literally, it's. Does that sound fun, kids? um,
One
but,
ticket, come this way.
yeah. But think about immortality. It's like, okay, then the alternative is living forever. But think about what that truly means. Like, would any of that time that's forever matter? Because the fact that we do have limited time gives us everything in a sense. Why do we have like a K through 12 program in the sense of like schooling where every year, which is an increment of time, you basically go up a level? Why go through education if you can just take infinite time because you have infinite time? Why stress to get a job? Why worry about retirement? Can there be a retirement? You can't just like like sit there for 900 years, if you're immortal, because you wouldn't know what to do with yourself. Some people, when they retire and they only have a few years left, like they don't know what to do with themselves. So what is this about immortality? Like, if life just goes on forever, what is there really anything to be grateful for? You just keep going. There's no meaning to it.
There was a show that we recently did at the high school. It was, I think, 2 years ago, last year. I don't even remember, but it was Tuck Everlasting, and I know that's like a young, kind of a younger kid book, but it's also made into a musical. And one of my favorite lines in the show is, I mean, if to give a preface of the plot, it's about this young girl who discovers this family who they live forever. They're immortal because they drank from this magical spring in the woods. And one of the
It's not
people in the
tacky.
family, what?
That's not tacky.
Yeah, when I first heard of the plot, I was very not sure about it. But I think the message is really fabulous because one of the guys is trying to convince the main girl, Winnie, to, once she turns 17, to drink the water and join like him on adventures around the world together. And she, to spoil it, she does not end up drinking the water. She ends up living her life. And the show ends with this like 10-minute dance ballet type sequence of the rest of her life. And before she makes that decision, she is on, there's this really, like, I can just visually see it in my mind of a rowboat in water. She's talking to the father of this family who is immortal. And he says, you can't have living without dying. Because, I mean, there's no, like, I mean, it's a cycle. If you think about this, the circle of life, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, there's a cycle to
Get
things.
Elton
And
John in here.
and
Right.
I truly believe you can't have that living without dying, and that you wouldn't be able to have that gratefulness for your life if you couldn't see all the terrible things. And like, yeah, death is scary and it happens every day, but I mean, people are being born every day as well, and that's something to be grateful for that new life. And I totally agree with you. I think if we were all immortal, there would be no meaning. And I know I'm making a bunch of references to all these musicals and TV shows and whatever, but in The
Right.
Good Place, like
Eh,
they're kind of immortal in the afterworld. But eventually, when they like, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but eventually, when like the characters kind of make it to the end, it's the final thing. They are in the good place and they're allowed to live forever, but everybody there is just numb because there is no
That's a good
meaning
word.
to that. And
Yeah.
there's and eventually they provide them with the opportunity, like when they're ready, they can um and move on isn't the right word because they've already moved on to the afterlife or whatever, but they basically cease to exist anymore. And I mean, obviously people don't have that choice of on earth of like when they, I mean, some do, of like when you die, but I think it goes to show that, I mean, yeah, because we die, there's only so much time that we're all given and we don't even know how long that's going to be. Um, so we need to be grateful for the time that we are given. And I don't want to be cheesy, but like live life to the fullest, you know? So it
Yeah.
definitely goes hand in hand, having that gratefulness and acknowledging that, like, yeah, you can't have living without dying. And if you were just immortal, nothing would mean anything.
Right. And I don't know, I think that's an idea that I feel like we could all improve ourselves with if we considered it more. This idea that, albeit cliche, um, live life to the fullest. But before I really say, like before I say that, like we would benefit with that. What does that mean exactly? Living life to the fullest.
I mean, honestly, I think a big part of it is being grateful. And I know I mentioned this earlier, but taking, and you also mentioned it too, like finding um, like the tiny perfect things that are those moments, that 3-second moment, and finding those things and those special times to be grateful for. I think gives life meaning, if that makes sense. Because it's like those moments of joy are just, I don't want to say magical. I'm just being so cheesy right now. But
No, but yeah, yeah.
I think those perfect moments is really what, I mean, there's so, like, when I'm just like thinking about it now, but there's so many movies that like are telling the message like you have to like live your life to the fullest, like live, and you can't have living without dying, like all of those messages. And I definitely think that, I mean, if you live each day like it's a blessing, and you live each day and you be grateful that you woke up, like be grateful that you woke up this morning and the sun came up and there's birds, and be grateful there's rain, be grateful there's sun, be grateful for everything, because it's like nothing is guaranteed. And I think
Like
that's living
those,
life to the fullest. Hmm?
I like those, like Saturday mornings during the winter when it's like the sun's not all the way up, but it's like, I don't know, it's this nice, there's all this snow on the ground, like all these inches of snow, and you wake up and you just look out your window. Not exactly a snow day, because I feel like that's a different vibe of like there's no school, but like specifically on a Saturday where you just wake up, especially as a kid, because you always just, snow's pretty cool. You can build snowmen or go sledding or something. And I don't know, it's just a very cozy feeling, especially being inside. You know that
Mm-hmm.
cozy feeling that you get when it's like a storm or rain?
Yeah, and you just sit and read a book. Oh,
Yeah, it's not like that, but just the quietness, because it's not snowing, it's not raining, it's just, I don't know, these fluffy pillows of snow.
it's peaceful.
Yeah, but it's like the little things, and it's the things that you can recite, like how I just did. Like I just gave you a scenario that doesn't really mean anything, but I don't know, we would take it for granted if we didn't talk about it every once in a while, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what about you?
What do you mean?
Do you have like a scenario like that for you? That 3-second moment, if you will?
So one of the scenarios that pops up in my mind is the when it's like storming outside and it's so chaotic, like outside your window, and it's storming, raining, and thunder and lightning, and then just sitting down and reading. I love that moment of peace, because honestly, like that kind of resembles how life practically is every day, like the chaos surrounding you. Because let's be real, the world is very chaotic. But then there's you in the midst of everything, and you get to choose how you fit. And I love that moment of peace when the storm is raging on, and you can just get sucked into a book, into a world that is not your own and that has nothing to do with you, and yet you are a quiet observer. I like that. And
Yeah.
I also really like, I mean, I'm just like picturing myself in like my friend's basement, like all of us up so late, like 3 o'clock in the morning. All of us are so tired and just out of it. And the more tired you get, the more open and honest you are. So that's the deep
Talk.
night, the deep talk, the
Yeah.
late night conversations where you understand each other like to a new level. And you can never reach that point unless you're tired. Like you just can't. And it just those moments too, I can just imagine like all like curled up with my friends, like maybe we're all like on the couch, or we're like falling asleep on top of each other, like without even meaning to. And then we just, in that moment of peacefulness where we're all kind of like tired and we've all had that deep talk and we're ready to sleep. It just, that moment of quiet sleepiness, but you know that you just uncovered like some really deep conversations. That's what I also thought of too.
And what I really liked your little picture that you painted of the storm, and you're just reading, and you said it's like almost like a microcosm of just a representation of how chaos is surrounding you, and you decide if you're going to bring the order or be the chaos that adds to it. And it almost makes me wonder how life kind of switches, like the external and the internal fronts are going on at the same time. Like, the way you respond to the world is going on at the same time as the external forces, like, respond to you. It's simultaneous.
Mm-hmm.
But at any given time, both of these forces are either chaos or order. So I feel like the chaos scenarios in the external, like take the weather for an example. It's like it's storming and it's unpredictable. Maybe there's a power outage or something, or like an external force, like I don't know, price increases of food or something. I don't know. Like you can't
Mm-hmm.
control it because of inflation or something. Um, but order would kind of be like the sunny day that you can do whatever you want. It's like 60, 65 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's like you can literally do whatever you want. You can stay inside, you can go outside. Like it's essentially a playground for you to do whatever you want on that given day. It's order, it's security, it's peace. You know that it's going to stay like that the entire day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then when it comes to yourself, there's also the chaos and the order, where if you feel that order, maybe you're more grateful to things, so you respond to the environment. You respond to the stormy day with a book, and you're enjoying your time. It's very mindful. It's a nice experience. Or you have that order when life has order, and you just go on a nice stroll on a sunny day to the park, and it's just nice and mindful and refreshing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're feeling chaotic yourself, then the storm probably gives you anxiety, or like you're freaking out about something. Or
Or the storm could give you that like strength and willpower to be as chaotic as you want.
yeah.
Either way.
Um or if it's like the sunny day, then you don't appreciate it at all because you're spiteful of the world, or you're just unpredictable. Maybe you're just overly sad and you can't see it. And obviously there's reasons for any of these internal scenarios, but it's just kind of interesting how there's always an external, but it's always about how you respond to it or just interact, because these scenarios are given to you. Life's always going to have random things, like in the next 5 minutes I could hear a doorbell ring and it's my long lost cousin who's been stuck in Jamaica for his entire life, and I just didn't know about him, and then my entire life changes because now I have a Jamaican brother.
That
Just
is
something
oddly
completely
specific.
completely out of left field. I don't have a Jamaican brother.
All
Um,
right. Okay. Keep
but
telling yourself that.
I'm just saying he could exist. So if you're listening from Jamaica, hit me up. Um, but it's just something completely random. But it's always up to you to decide what you're gonna do. Are you gonna be grateful? Are you going to respond as if you were grateful? Are you gonna turn a bad scenario into something you can be grateful of? Or are you just gonna be resentful? Your
Mm,
choice.
yeah.
What
And it
about
could be
you?
a little bit of a mix of both. What do you mean?
Or I don't know, just like what do you think? I'm passing the baton.
Eh. I mean, I think that you were talking a lot about like chaos and control. And I mean, there's always things that we can't control. Um,
Yeah.
for as much as like I wish I could control everything, I mean, it does not work out.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, chaos can be really good too. As someone who really enjoys having that like safety blanket of control,
Yeah.
there are moments when I'm really grateful for the randomness and the chaos of, say, like my friends. Like one of my friends is like really impulsive, like, and she'll just randomly do stuff, and it sometimes makes me a little bit nervous because it's not part of the plan, or it's not what I thought we were gonna do and
Keeps
whatnot.
things interesting.
But yeah, it does keep things interesting. You know, like I like one time we randomly went to Dunkin' Donuts at like 12 or 1 in the morning. And it's not something that I would do on my own at all, but it's like even those chaotic moments are can still be those moments of gratefulness and those moments of being mindful. Because I can just picture in my head, like when we're all in the car and just kind of like, what are we doing? Kind
Yeah,
of
and it's
moment.
memorable.
Yeah, and it's like those memorable moments are like things to be grateful for and are things to. I mean, like those 3 seconds doesn't have to be something peaceful. And I know I was mentioning peace
Yeah.
at the beginning, but now that I'm thinking about it and like hearing your thoughts, I mean, I don't think it necessarily has to be peaceful. I think it can be like that moment of like your mind maybe at peace while things around you are chaotic. If we want to use the book and the storm example once again, but I I think it's like you almost have to be on the lookout for things to be grateful for. Like things are probably most definitely underneath your nose, like thumbs, you know, like that you wouldn't even think of. Um,
It literally underneath your nose, unless it's in your nose, but it
oh
shouldn't.
yeah.
If you can fit your thumb into your nose,
All
I'd
right, let's
more
not
so
go
be
there.
impressed.
Rewind.
I'd be impressed at that point.
That yeah, I would. I mean, I'd
Yeah,
be
I don't
not
encourage it, but
grateful that
yeah.
I witnessed that. Just want to put that out there.
But you should be grateful of everything. Okay, maybe not that.
Yeah, I was like, wow. Um, I mean, I think there are always things to be grateful for. I mean, I would not believe for a minute if someone was like, well, there's nothing to be thankful for. Like on Thanksgiving, you know, those like petty movies or Hallmark movies when one person's like, well, I don't have anything to be thankful for. And then something happens and then they realize at the end that there's so much to be thankful for. Like, I mean, I definitely think there is always something to be thankful for. Like, even in the midst of something terrible happening. Like, I mean, like, take the pandemic, you know? Like, I'm thankful for phones and the ability to FaceTime other people and talk to other people because back in the day, I mean, they didn't have those abilities, you know. So
Yeah.
there's always going to be something in, amidst the chaos. Sorry, that was a struggle.
Yeah, and I do
Um,
feel like when you take that time to think about, like, what am I grateful for, it does feel like that nice reset and that nice push. Like,
mhm,
I've used this skill before, like, at work, for an example, where I had, like, an hour left, and the last hour is by far the worst one. It's very
mm,
slow. Um, at least it feels slow. And just because you're gonna leave soon and there's nothing to do and you just wanna go home, um,
mhm,
but really you can trick your mind into not feeling these negative thoughts. And if you take a minute to think about, "Okay, I know this is not my ideal situation. I would rather be at home. We know this, but, bear with me for a second. What are we grateful for here?" Well, like, you run through the list.
mhm,
It's like, "Well, I'm grateful that I can see these people here who I only see on this work shift on this day. I'm grateful that this is the final hour, so I'm almost out of here. I'm grateful that this is a fine enough job and that I get to take home food and get paid decently, and I don't know, it's something to do. I probably wouldn't have done anything else of importance. Like, you just think about all these little things. It's a nice little self-check. And then after
yeah,
you do that, it's really weird the power that it has because it's like you stop thinking about the things you were just complaining about, and now it's like, okay, wait, this is not bad. Like, I reset, literally.
mhm,
You know what I mean?
yeah, for sure. And I mean, like you had mentioned, like running down the list, and that's like the list can totally change. You know, it's like sometimes when I'm like before I go to bed, like I'll kind of run through the list, but I'll try to like add new things every day.
Yeah.
I mean, there was like at one point where I had put this thing on the back of my door that was like I needed to put something on it every day for something that I was thankful for. And it lasted for probably about a month, and then I forgot about it, which was kind of sad.
Yeah.
But it helped me. Like I still to this day I try and like think about what I'm thankful for, like either when I wake up or before I go to bed, or like one of the first things I try and think of when I wake up is like, oh my gosh, I'm really grateful for the ability to wake up and have this day. You know, like the simple things like that. And yeah, it can be like, and I could think that every morning, and that's good because you can be thankful for things multiple times because each day is a new day. But I think
Yeah.
it can almost be like fun to think of different things that maybe you haven't thought of before. You know, like instead of being
Yeah.
thankful for thumbs, like I'm thankful for my toes because otherwise I might not be able to balance. You know, things like that.
True.
Switch it up.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, because we're close to the end here, what do you think
Mm-hmm.
is the big idea here? What do you want to leave the audience with?
On the audience, well,
Whoa.
um, I mean, I would just encourage people to attempt that 3 second moment. I mean, if you're listening right now, like you could pause the video and just like take that moment and just
Moment of
think.
silence, please.
Yeah, I'm out here. I mean, even we could take a moment of silence here. We can just think.
Okay, 1 second.
And I mean, it's just
All right, there
amazing
you go.
of the things like you would almost already like think of. You know, I was just staring at this painting I have above my desk, and it's like, I
I
mean,
also
I'm
have paintings.
hey, twin. Okay, anyway, I mean, it's just thankful for that painting. It's so random, but it's just like because I look at it and it makes me happy, and I'm thankful for it. And I would just encourage people to just try and take that 3 second moment. And if it's kind of hard to remember to do that every day, I mean, just do it like once a week. Just do that reset, like Sunday night. Just do your reset, or Sunday morning or Monday morning. Just take that moment. And honestly, I think in the morning is my favorite time because new day, new day, new you. I mean, like, but I would encourage people to take that moment of gratitude.
Right. As important as it is, like, to grind, like, you know, homework and at a job and everything, you can't just keep going on autopilot forever. Like, you're going to burn out at some point, but this is a way to help you try not to burn out, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like the word reset as a good.
Yeah. I mean, it really does feel like that.
Mm-hmm. It's like you're a new person almost. Like, just take that deep breath.
I'm not like a new person, but just like you feel refreshed. You feel recharged in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like your head is less cloudy. But yeah, anyway, I think this is where we're good to end this off here. So thanks so much for joining me, Annamarie.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So, with that said, this has been Gratitude, and thanks for listening, everybody. I'll see you guys next time.